On April 20th, the U.S. House of Representatives passed a bill on allocating additional aid to Ukraine worth almost $61 billion. Later, it became known that the aid package would include long-range ballistic missiles, Army Tactical Missile System, abbreviated as ATACMS, as well as Bradley fighting vehicles, Humv vehicles, and M113 armored personnel carriers. Of course, the most interesting thing in this package is the ATACMS missiles. The basic version of this missile can hit a target up to 165 kilometers or 100 miles away with a warhead weighing 560 kilograms or 1,235 pounds, and the missile's kill area is comparable to a soccer field. In our video, we're going to talk about them and what changes we can expect in the Russian-Ukrainian war due to this delivery. First, a brief history of this missile. Its creation became possible after a change in the doctrine of use of the U.S. Army at the end of the Cold War. It prescribed the use of non-nuclear missiles with high accuracy to defeat enemy reserves instead of a nuclear strike. In 1986, Ling Temco Vought was awarded a contract to develop the ATACMS missile. The first test launch of the WGM-140, which received the Army designation MGM-140, took place in 1988. And in 1991, ATACMS was first used in combat during Operation Desert Storm. The basic version of the MGM-140A ATACMS Block 1 consists of a nose-mounted control system, a cluster warhead, a solid fuel engine, and aerodynamic rudders. The M39 warhead contains approximately 950 M74 submunitions that can hit lightly armored vehicles, personnel, and enemy radar with tungsten fragments. A single M74 submunition is capable of striking live ammunition within a radius of 15 meters or 50 feet. Notably, during Block 1 testing, its accuracy proved unsatisfactory, but the missile's performance was deemed sufficient for a cluster munition. The ATACMS tactical missile flies to the target on a semi-ballistic trajectory, where the initial acceleration follows a rigidly defined trajectory and the subsequent flight is guided. The range of the ATACMS Block 1 missile is 165 kilometers or 100 miles. ATACMS is stored in a transport and launch container, which is loaded with ammunition and sealed at the factory. This allows for long periods of maintenance-free operation and minimizes the pre-launch preparation of the ATACMS missile. Multiple launch rocket systems are used to launch the missiles. The tracked M270 Multiple Launch Rocket System, abbreviated MLRS, is the wheeled M142 High Mobility Artillery Rocket System, abbreviated HIMARS. The tracked vehicle can carry 2 containers with ballistic missiles or rockets, while the HIMARS can carry only 1. In 1998, an improved MGM-140B ATACMS Block 1A missile appeared, which featured an increased target engagement range of 300 kilometers or 185 miles. For this purpose, the number of M74 submunitions was reduced to 275 to 300, and the control system was supplemented with the Navstar satellite subsystem. Improved equipment allowed to increase the accuracy of the missile. The circular probable deviation of the upgraded missile is less than 100 meters, against 250 in the Block 1 version. In feet, this would be 330 and 820, respectively. Also based on the improved ATACMS, developed a missile Block 1A unitary with a unitary fragmentation warhead weighing 227 kilograms or 500 pounds. The MGM-164 ATACMS 2000 and ATACMS 2000 MOD remain the most advanced versions of the current U.S. tactical missiles. The missiles, with a range of 300 kilometers, carries a fragmentation-fused warhead, which was supplemented with a 3-mode fuse with an airburst function. ATACMS 2000 MOD has the same capabilities, but they're based on modernized Block 1 and Block 1A missiles. Production of ATACMS missiles continued until 2007. A total of 3.7 thousand pieces of various modifications were produced, including 1,650 ATACMS Block 1, 610 Block 1A, and 513 ATACMS 2000. ATACMS was first used during Operation Desert Storm in 1991. During the 41-day conflict, M270s fired 32 Block 1 missiles at Iraqi positions. The ballistic missiles were used to strike air defense batteries, radar stations, and communications nodes. During the war in Iraq in 2003, the U.S. and its allies also actively used ATACMS. 450 missiles were fired. In total, by 2015, more than 560 ATACMS missiles were used in combat operations. In parallel, the U.S. worked to maintain the combat readiness of the remaining missiles. After the completion of ATACMS production, the Service Life Extension Program, abbreviated as SLEP, was launched to extend the service life and improve the performance of ATACMS missiles. The manufacturer also upgraded the aging ATACMS Block 1 to the ATACMS 2000 version. The purpose of these works was to maintain the combat readiness of existing missiles until the adoption of new products, which was delayed. In November 2023, it became known about the successful testing of the Precision Strike Missile, abbreviated PRISM, which will replace the ATACMS, and the first missiles were delivered to the military in December. Now let's move directly to Ukrainian affairs. Kyiv received its first ATACMS missiles in 2023. The U.S. is believed to have given Ukraine no more than 20 missiles as part of a secret shipment. Subsequently, the White House reported that the Ukrainian armed forces received missiles with a range of 165 kilometers. Kyiv received the earliest and most numerous ATACMS Block 1 missiles. These missiles, in particular, were used to attack in October the airfield of the Russian armed forces in Berdyansk, Zaporizhia region. At that time, 9 helicopters were destroyed. M74 submunitions were found at the site of the strike. Now, what ATACMS missiles will be delivered to Ukraine? Almost immediately after the U.S. Senate approved a new package of military aid to Kyiv, the media reported that the United States in April secretly supplied Ukraine with 300-kilometer range ATACMS missiles, and the Ukrainian military even had time to use them on Crimea. These weapons were part of the $300 million U.S. aid package that President Joe Biden approved in March. On April 24th, a U.S. State Department spokesman officially announced the missile deliveries. I can confirm that the United States has provided Ukraine with long-range ATACMS missiles at the direct order of the President, Vedant Patel told reporters, adding that the missiles arrived in Ukraine in April. The missiles were first used in the early morning hours of April 17th, according to a Reuters interlocutor who spoke on condition of anonymity. They were launched at an airfield in Zankoy in annexed Crimea, located about 165 kilometers from the Ukrainian front line. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, in an evening address that day, thanked the Ukrainian military for its accuracy during the operation to hit the Russian airfield in Zankoy. According to Zelensky, the AFU realized a correct strike on the occupant in Zankoy on the airfield. Russian authorities have not commented on reports of explosions in Zankoy. Crimean public wrote about several sources of powerful fires, as well as the fact that the airfield could be home to attack helicopters and launchers of S-300 and S-400 surface-to-air missile systems. According to the New York Times, Russian forces in the occupied town of Berdyansk in the Zaporizhia region were struck. Consequently, it's now safe to say that Ukraine has already received ATACMS missiles with a range of 300 kilometers, 185 miles, and can now strike not only the occupied territories of Donetsk, Luhansk, and Zaporizhia and Kherson regions, but also the entire Crimean Peninsula, Belgorod, Bryansk, Kursk, Voronezh, Rostov regions, and parts of Krasnodar Krai. For example, the distance between Kramatorsk, which is controlled by the Ukrainian army, and Rodov-on-Don is 219 kilometers or 136 miles. The shortest distance between Kharkiv and Voronezh is about 280 kilometers or 174 miles. Military and infrastructure facilities located in these regions, including military airfields, military units, power plants, and logistics hubs, will be under attack. Of course, one of the priority targets will be the Crimean Bridge. The Russian media even flashed information that the attack on it would be carried out on June 22, 2024. Recall that on June 22, 1941, Germany attacked the Soviet Union. Now let's predict how ATACMS missiles can affect the course of hostilities. A lot depends on the number, which will be provided to Ukraine. U.S. Administration National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan says Washington has provided a substantial number and plans to send more. They will make a difference. But as I've said before, there is no magic wand, Sullivan immediately added. What the official meant by "they will change the situation" is unclear. Will they stop the Russian army's offensive, or help organize a new Ukrainian counteroffensive, or maybe defeat the Russian army altogether? The latter, in light of recent events on the front, looks fantastic now. This is probably why Sullivan said that there is no magic wand. ATACMS missiles alone are not enough for a successful counteroffensive. Let's remember how many tanks, infantry, fighting vehicles, and other weapons the West supplied to Ukraine for the summer counteroffensive last summer. So surely the nearest and most realistic tasks for ATACMS missiles is to help stop the Russian offensive. That task is well within their capabilities. Let's remember how ATACMS' little brothers, GMLRS missiles, disabled the Antonov Bridge over the Dnieper River, thus significantly disrupting the logistics of ammunition and military equipment supply for the Russian army, which was one of the decisive factors in the withdrawal of its troops from the occupied Kherson. However, the GMLRS has a warhead weight of only 90 kilograms or 200 pounds, which is 2.5 times less than the ATACMS. So why wouldn't Ukraine do something similar in Crimea? Destroy the Crimean Bridge and leave that peninsula without supplies? Of course, there's already an overland corridor through occupied Mariupol and further along the coast to the Sea of Azov. The Russians have even started building a railroad there. But this corridor is too close to the front line, and even GMLRS missiles can reach it. Of course, the air defense assets that protected the Crimean Bridge were much larger than the Antonov Bridge, and the Russians have already learned how to fight the missiles that HIMARS launches. They generate false GPS signals, thus fooling the guidance system. Therefore, neither GMLRS missiles nor GLSDB small-diameter ground-based bombs, which are also launched from HIMARS, have recently shown proper effectiveness. Foreign Affairs also wrote that the Russian armed forces have proven their prowess in countering GPS-guided ATACMS missiles. Well, only time will tell whether or not Ukraine will be able to stop the Russian offensive with the help of ATACMS missiles and other weapons given to it by the United States. We should also add that American engineers are probably taking into account the experience of using their weapons against a strong, technologically well-equipped enemy and are making certain adjustments to their new designs. In particular, in the design of an even more powerful munition for the M270 MLRS and M142 HIMARS, a missile with a range of more than 500 kilometers or 300 miles with a warhead weight of 91 kilograms or 200 pounds. What do you think? Can ATACMS missiles help Ukraine against Russian aggression? Share your thoughts in the comments. We'd be grateful for a thumbs up and a subscription to our channel about modern weaponry. See you soon.